Good evening, everybody. Hi, and welcome back again to yet another Adventure Uncovered in Conversations. This is our fourth live conversation of the series, and we're really excited. This one, I mean, they're all brilliant, but this one is really, really exciting. We are joined by two fabulous, wonderful wild swimmers. Give us a wave. Hi, Calum. Hi, Amy.
Hey guys. Hey, how's it going?
So we're going to hear more from both Calum and Amy later on. So thank you so much, Calum and Amy, for joining us tonight. The theme of tonight is all about, as you can guess, wild swimming, outdoor swimming, and everything that means and what it entails and the benefits that it might bring us. So we're going to be talking live to both Calum and Amy in about 40 minutes. But before then, we're going to look at two films that each of them have made and have sort of featured in to just learn a little bit more about their work. And we also were lucky enough to catch up with both of them a couple of weeks ago for a brief Q&A. So we're going to start with Calum's film, and then we're going to chat to Calum, and then we'll watch Amy's film and chat to Amy, and then both Calum and Amy will be around at the end of the broadcast for about 10 to 15 minutes for a live Q&A. So throughout the next 40 minutes, as you're watching the Q&A with both Calum and Amy and their films, if you have any questions that pop up, please put them in the live chat box on the left-hand side, right-hand side of your screens on YouTube, or you can also use the hashtag AU Conversations on any social media and get your questions in, and then I will be able to ask those to both of them afterwards. But without further ado, we'll start off with watching Swim Wild, which is a short film about the wild swimming brothers, of which Calum is the middle brother. So enjoy this, and we'll see you in about 20 minutes.
There's something special about being in water. It connects you to a part of yourself that you don't usually have access to.
I think we just naturally grew up with the outdoors as our kind of playground. It was the delayed.
My grandma, her name was Grandma Wild. She was always really keen that we'd go up and be outdoors as much as possible. You could just tell how much she loved it. I think she wanted us to figure it out for ourselves. Like, everyone needs it. The three of us were in different cities, and you get wrapped up in your little city world.
Working in London, I think I did like 2 years there before I really started going around the bend a bit.
There's a million clubs and a million bars, all these things you can do, but there's nothing that replicates that kind of sense of freedom.
I think as I drifted through life, I was getting lost or further away from someone who 8-year-old Calum would have been proud of. I realised how much that childhood meant to me. I was like, okay, this is the time, I need to do something different. I wanted to come up with an activity that was connected to the Lake District where we grew up. So I kind of just thought of, why don't we swim the river that went past our garden?
The Wild Swimming Brothers kicked off with Calum's idea to swim the entire River Eden, so the 90 miles, I think about 140 kilometres.
It was just a moment of feeling like you're in the right place and that what you're doing is good. This is what you're supposed to be doing. Not only do I feel this, but I'm connected to these two people who I know better than anyone else in the world, and they feel it as well. Swimming in cold water simplifies things, at least for a short period of time.
I thought you were going to whisper some secret about how to do it. I was like, yes, I need this.
Immediately just roots you in the moment.
Can you realise as I filmed any of that? Oh.
Such an amazing, transformative journey together that we then decided we can't stop this.
We were desperate to keep escaping the city as much as we could.
I was like, well, we know now we can swim 140 kilometres, so why can't we do the swim in the Arctic?
We swam the 3 biggest, most powerful maelstroms in the world. We swam from Europe to Asia. We thought we'd pay tribute to Grandma, and so we swam the length of Loch Broom, because that's where our Grandma Wild's from. We swam to where she's buried and laid a wreath on her grave. If there hadn't been someone like Grandma Wild in our lives, we wouldn't have had the drive to do this. And a lot of people haven't had access to it, haven't been privileged enough to be in nature often.
It is like a release, getting out of the city, but it's much deeper. You become much more in tune with what you're thinking, what you're feeling.
I don't think I could ever call anything I've had depression, but I have been completely detached. I know that the amount of it that I felt has been helped hugely through swimming outdoors.
I still need to live in the real world, the 21st century. I need to pay for the things that I need, but like the quest for achieving more or buying more doesn't really lead a lot of people to happiness. And if having a closer relationship with the natural world, having a closer relationship with the people who you spend the majority of your life with makes you happier, why is that mad? It's just incredibly important that people try and reclaim that joy, the childish joy of being outdoors.
Hello everyone, and here we are at AU Conversations, and today we've got Calum Hudson from the Wild Swimming Brothers. Calum is the middle brother. Yeah, I'm going to kick things off and just talk about how we met and where it all started for AU.
It's been a while.
The Wild Swimming Brothers, yeah, it has been a while. So it was really, actually, you've probably forgotten about this, Calum, because you were kind of, you were a celebrity then, and I wasn't. I was a volunteer organising Tales of Adventure in London pubs every month, and I was organising one event, and you were speaking at it, and I was like, "This is cool. This is really interesting." Obviously, coming in at the environmental angle and adventure, which I was really interested in at the time, and Adventure Uncovered wasn't really born yet. It was just sort of an idea, and there was a competition and a raffle to swim with you. Yeah. At King's Cross, where they just completed this new pond there, right?
Yeah, what a prize as well.
Yeah. And did that actually run ahead? That
That pond was amazing. I don't know if people will have been to it. It was maybe like 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago. They had this amazing freshwater pond behind King's Cross with these self-replenishing reed beds. It was freezing cold. It was really deep, but I think it was an art installation, or it wasn't designed for people to go and use as a swimming pool, really. It didn't. You had to book a certain slot, and every time I went, there was only a couple of people there.
So someone won the prize, and you obviously swam with that, and I kind of tried to piggyback and get in on the act and have a swim with you, because, you know, I grew up, as you know, in Indonesia, and swimming was huge, and I used to swim a lot, and I was like, I want to get into this UK swimming malarkey. But for some reason, I didn't show up, and it kind of went from there for a few months, and then Adventure Uncovered evolved a bit, and I was like, oh, do you know what? I think with Rosie and I because we love swimming and oceans and out, you know, the Jurassic Coast there, we're like, we need to do an outdoor swimming event and tie that in with, you know, environmental messaging and all that. And, you know, Wild Swimming Brothers would be perfect for that. So we went back and approached you, and you said, brilliant idea, and liked the whole AU concept, didn't you? And then you, I think, suggested Durdle Door, right?
Yeah, it was, I think we've always liked the concept of having something a little bit bigger than just somebody's personal challenge. The thing I remember the most is that they were genuinely adventures, that you have in your mind that a UK adventure is something that's going to be, you know, relatively sanitized, and it's not going to be something that's really exciting or exhilarating. But both of them, you know, the Durdle Door, we got that second day when the waves were really high, and we had everyone out, and it was an incredible swim and really exhilarating. And yeah, and seeing the look on everyone's faces, because there was a little bit of apprehension, like, are we doing, because we had, the first day was very beautiful, sunny. We swam through Durdle Door, we did the talk on the beach, and it was everything that you would expect that event to be. The second day was when the waves were incredibly high. It was quite a strong storm, and that was maybe not what we were expecting. But actually, the looks on everyone's faces when they came out, I think someone took a selfie of a big group of everyone, and I don't think I've seen a happier group of people in a long time.
About the film, though, I think let's talk about that. We absolutely loved having it at the film festival. So we showed it with Wild Swim, and then we had Swim Wild with you guys, and then we had Amy and Jack who came in and gave a Q&A afterwards. Yeah, tell us about the film and how it came to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, first of all, I feel sorry for the next person who's going to have to do a film about wild swimming, as all the names have gone now. It's genuinely one of the most enjoyable experiences, because we kind of had quite a loose concept of what we were going to film and how we were going to tell the story. And all three of us hadn't seen each other for a while. Robbie was living in Slovakia at the time. Me and Jack had been pretty busy with work and life in London, and we filmed it in November, so it was kind of towards the back end of when the majority of our swimming events and swimming talks were. So we hadn't swam together properly in a while. And the location we picked was in Buttermere, which is, we grew up in the Lake District. So it was a home, it was a bit of an inception. It was a homecoming within a homecoming. So I think that bled through into the film, that we were just genuinely incredibly happy to be back where we had grown up swimming. So it made it easier to make the film about why we had started swimming in the first place.
James and I were chatting about the film earlier. We were saying how, on the face of it, it's a film about, you know, three brothers that are now, you know, accomplished. You've done a lot of swims internationally, and yet, really, the film is about, you know, matriarchy, in the way that it's about, you know, your grandma, who's obviously so inspirational for the three of you, and also your mum. And so, yeah, just like tell us about that and the significance of her, Grandma Wild, and your mum.
For all three of us, Grandma Wild became this kind of symbol of the wild, the natural world. We were lucky enough to grow up in the Lake District, but the Lake District is a beautiful place, but not necessarily a wild place. You know, there's dry stone walls everywhere. There's, you know, 10 a penny a tourist in August. It's still beautiful, but it's not what I would call a wild landscape. Whereas the Scottish Highlands are genuinely wild. You can walk for a day and not really see anyone else. There's, you know, golden eagles and pine martins, and, we grew up as kids hearing about, the Scottish wildcat and the rarest cat on the planet, and people don't even know about it. It lives in Scotland, and I think there's like 150 of them left. So growing up, that had a huge impact on us. And as we got older and spent more time, at university, partying, drinking, going out, getting jobs, that something that could have just been nostalgia was actually deeper, because it was linked to needing to connect more with nature. So I think Grandma was always a symbol of that. And as we've got older, we've realised more and more how important it was. And she passed away, and we did a swim of Loch Broom where she was buried in memory of her. And it's one of those things that as time goes by, I realise even more and more how grateful I am to her that she chose to go off and live in the middle of nowhere and have a house with a grass roof and a compost toilet, because without those experiences, we would not be doing wild swimming, and we wouldn't be going on these adventures together at all. And maybe that's where the lack of the interest in the kind of like, we like to do difficult challenges, and don't get me wrong, we talk about ourselves a lot when we do them, but at the same time, there's the reason that there's that kind of underlying vein of there being a more important reason for doing something is, I think that having a grandma as an influence is that maybe it was quiet, it was unspoken. She was never, forcing us to do something or telling us to go outside or go and explore. We were just kind of left to do it. So I think it was a softer influence, which long term roots itself deeper.
And I think absolutely, I think that really comes through. I really like the part, and it stuck with me when I watched it at the film festival, and rewatching it again today. It's stuck with me again where you say, I realised I'd become somebody that the 8-year-old me wouldn't have wanted me to become.
There's probably two parts to it. I think there's the first part that I think naturally, as a person who grows up in the countryside and then moves to a city, you're going to experience that feeling of kind of dislocation a little bit. But also, our generation has gone through a huge change, that when we were kids going outside, playing in fields, forests, rivers, no one had a phone. I think people have forgotten how much everything has changed in a short period of time, that the reason that feels even more a deeper meaning or a deeper connection to nature is because that when you were a kid and when you were in nature, there was no one filming anything or taking a mobile phone. You went camping and you didn't have no one was posting, so it was even more sensual an experience because you were without technology. So even now, when you're trying to recapture that, you're never. It's really difficult to get back to that feeling of rest and calm and peacefulness. Then when you chuck that, chuck an urban environment on top of that, chuck exhaustion, fatigue, stress, work, loneliness. It's even more intense. And then you go for a swim and you jump in a river, and in 10 seconds, you're kind of back to where you were. So I think outdoor swimming is just a really quick way to immediately flick that switch. I've not really yet found anything other than maybe, I don't know, like listening to music or something like that, that really is so instantly relaxing and can just change a mindset so quickly. Like Amy's film, she was, how amazing is that? And I've heard it from so many people, and there's more and more kind of soft scientific studies, about the benefits of immersing yourself in nature for depression or anxiety or stress. And we're at the beginnings of a body of work, which I would imagine over the next few years is going to become richer and richer. And who knows, maybe you'll be diagnosed with clinical depression, you'll get, CBT, you'll get counselling, but you'll also be prescribed an hour of nature every day. And who's to say that that's not something that would be a huge benefit? And
so, yeah, what about your plans now for you, Calum, and the Wild Swimming Brothers? What's next? You mean you've had your book out, you've launched the movie, your short film. Yeah, what's coming?
We've like meandered through the outdoor swimming or the wild swimming world, and as you kind of keep going and doing different swims or different adventures, you're finding a niche within the next niche. And I think we've worked out that the cold ice swimming is our favourite. I know it sounds weird and a bit sadomasochistic, but that is what we really like doing. So we're going to try and do an ice mile, which will either, depending on temperatures, will either be the end of this year or early 2021. So that it's a mile swim in under 5-degree water. So that's what I was doing at Brockwell Lido before Singapore. I managed to do an ice kilometre.
So where would you do that then? Where will you do the mile swim?
Well, I'll train. The nice thing is that the London Lidos get below 5 degrees, and they keep them open through the winter, so I can train at Brockwell Lido, and then I'll probably try it in Scotland. But yeah, they also have a sauna at Brockwell Lido, which I've been told by other ice swimmers makes me a bit of a softie.
I've been in there.
Oh,
it's
great,
so
isn't
good.
it?
When they waft the towels around, oh, it's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's why I go.
Yeah, and there's also a little bit of like the non-swimming side of it, which is more like the Scandinavian sauna culture of, like you say, there's people who go down, have a dunk in the sauna, waft the towel back in the water. It's lovely. The nice thing as well about the winter swimming community, you cannot tell who is the most hardcore. Like it's a real level of the cold. You can't kind of macho it or psych yourself up. Like you either are just acclimatized physically and psychologically, or you're not. And I was like pushing for the kilometre, and I'd go in the sauna afterwards, and I had this like routine of like come out, flip-flops on, stop the heat going out my feet, hat on immediately, green tea, chocolate, pat down, squats, 10 minutes on one side of the sauna, 10 minutes on the other side. And there was this lady called Julie who was there every day, and then I gradually got talking to her, and she used to just knock out kilometres just without even trying.
Do you know what? I was just about to say that. There we are. And then women just so calmly, collectively just smash it, don't they? So, so much better at cold water swimming, I think.
Yeah, I think it's like, I think there's a psychology behind it, which is it's a different kind of toughness. It's quiet toughness. It's all internal, which I don't think men cope with that as much. You know, so I think it's a different kind of toughness. When I told her, she was like, "Oh, you all right? You look a bit cold." I was like, "Oh yeah, I'm actually trying to do a kilometre," and she was like, "Oh right, oh what is that a thing?" And I was like, "Yeah," and she was like, "Oh well, I might give the mile a go." And then honestly, like 3 weeks later, she messaged me on Twitter, and she's just like, "Yeah, did the mile this morning." And I was like, "Julie, you're like one of the most hardcore ice swimmers in London, easily." Like, and I think she did a couple, and some days she'd just do one, and some days she wouldn't.
Okay, fantastic stuff from Calum Hudson there, one of the Wild Swimming brothers. Very inspirational, and was really interesting listening to his conversation. If you do have questions for Calum, then get them into the live chat at the side of your screen now, because he is waiting to speak to you. He's going to be available in about 20 minutes time, after we've also heard from Amy, to answer any questions that you have. So do get your questions in. You can also use the hashtag AU Conversations on any social media as well if you have questions, if you don't have a YouTube account, for example, and we can get those questions across as well. So before we hear from Calum, we're also going to just play you Amy's video. So Amy Walker is also joining us, and before we get to the Q&A, we're going to play Amy's film, which is called Wild Swim, and then hear a short Q&A with Amy. So enjoy.
With everything going on right now, we've had to postpone a lot of our live events and adventures. So we thought we'd run a mini-series of conversations with different adventurers, filmmakers and friends with Venture Uncovered. So today we're speaking to Amy Walker from the film Wild Swim. Amy entered the film into the Venture Uncovered Film Festival and it's just blown audiences away. It's brilliant. So we're going to show you the film now and then we're going to chat to Amy about it. Enjoy!
One of the things that I often describe to people that wild swimming does is if I can lie on my back and float somewhere and stare at a sky, that is the closest I can get to my brain being still. And particularly if you're somebody who's prone to depression and anxiety, that's something that doesn't happen very often at all. And so the fact that I can just be still and get like a moment of clarity from it is pretty amazing. In the last maybe 4 years, I've had a couple of periods of depression. They tend to last for like 6 months, and I think maybe in a way I was looking for something else that might give me a bit more of a mind-body connection, because that's something that I feel really strongly when I become depressed, that I become really disconnected from my body, because you're like living in your mind the whole time. You're just ruminating on thoughts constantly, and it's really easy to get disconnected from your body. And so doing something really physical, like swimming in really cold water, can give you a sensation back that you've not experienced for ages. Being in a swimsuit was always something you were ridiculed for as a kid. And so there's a great joy in finding that there's something I can do with my body exactly as it is now. Nothing needs to change about my body for me to be good at wild swimming. Having the confidence to post a picture of myself just in a swimsuit, and a bright pink one at that, I guess quite empowering in a way. Doing something that reminds you that your body is remarkable in its own sense, but it's a reminder that you're physically capable of doing stuff, and that's, especially when you're depressed, that's a really important thing. And one of the things is, like, I think that if 15-year-old me had seen somebody in a swimsuit of the same build as me, perhaps I would have felt more okay with the world. Seeing your body as something that facilitates you doing things that bring you joy, rather than it being the sum total of your being, which I think is how I felt through a lot of my teenage years.
We've absolutely loved having Wild Swim in the Adventure Uncovered Film Festival. It's just been so well received. It went down so well at the London launch where you came to speak, and we've shown it at all the locations since then. Tell us a bit more about it and where the idea came from and how you met Kate, the director.
Me and Kate met essentially in the digital world long before we were all forced to take our entire lives online. We communicated through Instagram to begin with. I was using Instagram and still am using Instagram as a platform for like blogging about wild swimming, with a kind of particular emphasis on seeing your body as like a vessel for adventure rather than this kind of societal ideal of it needing to be an object of, I don't know, some kind of physical perfection or whatever. Kate said that she was looking to make a film that wasn't just about sport for sport's sake, like it was about wild swimming, but she wanted to talk to somebody who used it for, a particular reason. It had like a personal significance to them. And so that's where we initially connected and started thinking about where we might want to film it. And really the location came about just because I was living in the Yorkshire Dales, and we picked Janet's Foss primarily because it's got such beautiful crystal clear water.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure when the sun was going to hit Janet's Foss, but it's kind of in like a glade, like sort of a bit of a valley, and it's actually just a really shallow stream for the most part, with this single drop waterfall, like just in the middle of, you know, in the middle of an otherwise like really insignificant stream that's beautiful, but you know, and then there's Janet's Foss just popping out. Yeah, and the sun hit perfectly. Kate was filming with a GoPro. We had 2 GoPros, and Whitney was also filming with a digital camera. She did some of the shots that were from above the waterfall, and Kate was out of the water for a while, and then got in the water. And because it was this time of year, like we must be really close now actually to the time of year when we filmed it, it was still really cold. And although Kate loves swimming, she's not as much of a winter swimmer as me. In an ideal world, like, lessons learned, Kate should definitely have been in a wetsuit. Like, we had to stop, not because I wanted to get out of the water, but because Kate couldn't film anymore. She was that cold.
It's so good though, and I hadn't realised that Kate's also a swimmer, you know, but now it's so clear, because there's something about the film that really connects. You really connect with you as a person, and also as you as somebody who clearly just loves being in water. And it's just, there's something so honest about it in the way you speak about it and the way that it's shot.
Me and Kate recorded the audio for the video before we actually went and did any swimming. So we basically just had a really informal interview where Kate asked me some questions, and then I just prattled on about wild swimming and how much I enjoy it. And I guess we'd already connected on talking about what wild swimming meant to us and why we liked it, and really just sort of, you know, thinking about like the great joy of being in water and how much we both enjoy it. So I don't know, I think often when you've got something like that in common, it can spark an easy rapport. But I don't know, it was nice, I enjoyed it. And I'd said that it was my preference that we recorded the audio just as sound, that I didn't actually want to do a video interview, because I didn't feel, I think maybe where I was at the time, I didn't feel confident about doing it, which sounds strange to say that I was perfectly happy to be in a swimsuit and like swim around underwater, but I don't know, something about being in water maybe makes me feel more confident than sitting in front of a camera.
You know, we did a Q&A earlier in the week with Dan Raven Ellison, who you'll remember from the London launch, the film festival, who did the UK in 100 seconds.
Love that film so much.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And you know, Ellie asked him, you know, what was one of the highlights for you? In fact, no, she didn't even ask him what was one of the highlights. Ellie said, you know, how was the Adventure Uncovered Film Festival for you? And he said, you know, it was great. We were delighted to be asked to come and speak. He said, but I'm actually going to pivot and say that, you know, and talk about another film. And he says, you know, when you've watched 20 or 30 films in a night, you know, some of them stick with you and some of them don't. And the one that stuck with me, I forget her name, is a woman from the north who swims in all sorts of ridiculously cold places that I would never dream of swimming in. And he said, you know, he says, there's something so simple about the film that I just love. And it's stuck with me, and her, you know, the Q&A that she did afterwards has just stuck with me ever since. You know, and it's just, it's so...
How nice is that?
Yeah, it's amazing. I think at every location that we've shown Wild Swim, it's just been so standout. And yet, I mean, it's so short. What is it, 2.5 minutes or something? It's
2 minutes 54 seconds. It's like over before you know it.
Yeah.
I guess it's strange because it feels like this, like Kate has captured, I think, who I am, and like in a way that I would never have imagined. And it feels like this really personal thing to share people. It's kind of strange that like it does feel a bit like bearing my soul. It's quite different to, I mean, like on Instagram, I'm very honest anyway. Like I'm often talking about my mental health, and I'm, you know, there are photographs of me there in a swimsuit, that kind of thing. But it's not the same as a video.
What is it like watching it now? Has your sort of feelings towards it changed now that, you know, you've seen it so many times? You know that everybody loves it, and
just thinking about the journey from like where I was at when me and Kate first met, when we filmed it, because there was a delay obviously between us first communicating with one another and then filming it. And then because Kate was working full time, quite a long time between us making the film and me seeing the first copy of it.
Yeah.
And then like really quite a long time again before, like a whole year before it was shown anywhere. And I mean, a long time before I kind of felt confident to do anything with it. I didn't share it on social media. I showed a few friends and family, not even all my family. I hadn't shown it to my dad until he saw it at the Kendal Mountain Film Festival. Kendal's got this particular significance for me in that both my parents are mountaineers and they've been going to Kendal Mountain Film Festival like over their lifetimes for absolutely years. And I think I've felt a little bit of a feeling that I haven't completely fit into their world of mountaineering throughout my life. I tried to get into climbing. Turned out I really hate heights, so I'm just not interested in it. I love walking, but I'm not like a hugely adventurous person. And so I think when it got into Kendal and both my parents came to see it, it felt like this amazing significance of crossing over into their world. Like,
yeah. I just wanted to ask a bit about, you know, how it's been received. You know, how has Wild Swim been received? What kind of success have you seen?
Any response that we've had has been quite it's been like quite an emotional journey to go on, kind of thing. And sometimes I feel really guilty for getting kind of like praise for the film, because I'm like, literally it took like about 4 hours of my time and then like about 7 months of Kate's life. I mean, we felt like all of the audio was recorded in one take. It took us about an hour. And then we did all of the filming in maybe like an hour and a half. So if you include the time it took us to drive to and from Janet's Foss, 4 hours of my life, that's it. I suppose I was just thinking about the first time that I saw it on the big screen, because up until then I'd only ever watched it on my phone. So like, you know, like a screen this big, to be sat in an actual cinema looking at this huge video and sat there knowing that I'm going to do a Q&A the second it finishes was just the most mind-blowing experience. When I came down to London to meet you guys, that was a really lovely experience, because I think, you know, you'd planned the venue well, like the number of people there made it feel like a really intimate gathering, but, you know, with a kind of celebratory feel. There were enough of us that it felt like a really good environment. And that was the first time that me and Kate had watched it together as well, seeing it at the Adventure Uncovered Film Festival. So to have both of us sat there was quite strange, because I think, you know, for me, when I'm watching it, I'm thinking about the personal element of it. Kate was very much thinking about her editing skills. She was thinking about her filmmaker skills, kind of thing. So we're both coming at it from a completely different angle.
I want to talk a bit about, you know, swimming and what, you know, swimming means for you and the significance of swimming.
I know that when we did the question and answer after the showing at the film festival, yeah, it was really interesting having me and Jack answering the same questions, and there were people asking how we plan for a swim and that kind of thing. And like my like completely lackadaisical approach to like how to plan a swim. Well, I mean, I might bring a swimming costume, like if I was planning really well. I might even bring a towel if I was looking. But like in the summer, quite often having a swim means that I accidentally find myself near some water and I go, okay, take my clothes off and get in then.
Is that one of the things that you do love about swimming, like the simplicity of it in a way? You know, you don't need lots of kit, you don't need lots of gear. You know,
you don't really need anything for swimming. I mean, winter swimming, all right, is a slightly different game. Like, obviously there is an added level of risk in terms of temperature drop and things like that. And I'm not advocating that people just jump into winter swimming without thinking about it. Definitely things like having boots and gloves make it far more possible for me to swim in the winter. But in summer, I think, you know, it's an activity that requires almost no equipment.
So, and you say in the film as well, you know, when I go swimming, it's one of the few times and the closest that I get to my brain being still. And, you know, it's just, I think it's just perfectly encapsulates what's so amazing about swimming. You also say when you go swimming, you feel so connected to your own body. And it's a real kind of moment, one of those rare moments that are getting more and more rare, I think, increasingly, where you have that total connection to yourself through, you know, through swimming. And I think certainly through swimming in cold water, you get that. But just, yeah, like, can you just talk about that a bit more and what you feel that swimming really brings to you?
So I think in the film, right at the beginning, there's kind of an aerial shot of me on my back, and the water's, you know, covering my ears basically. And for me, I think there's really something about the kind of how it affects your senses being in water. So for me, definitely there's something about having my ears covered by water, and then, you know, having a complete expanse of sky that really just like focuses your mind. And what I said was it kind of shuts my brain off. I think that's what a lot of us are seeking, like on a day-to-day basis, isn't it? We're kind of now more than ever living in this onslaught of digital attention. Like, I don't know, I suspect a lot of people would relate to having to force themselves off social media, force themselves off the internet recently. And it's about just being in water. And in winter, you've got that cold, sharp shock of being in cold water that just, for me, I think often when I'm walking into a swim, I'll find that, you know, I'm really living up in my brain. And the biggest thing that happens is that when I get in water, it returns me into my body. So I guess it's that kind of grounding thing, but really it's just like stopping all that nonsense for a bit and just like it's just allowing you to inhabit your body again for a while. Because I don't know, I think that's probably a thing that a lot of people feel, like that a lot of the time we just all live up in our brains nowadays and not in our bodies.
I don't know if you remember, but at the Adventure Uncovered Film Festival, we had the UK Adventure Uncovered map, and we were asking people to pin different places on, of local places that they really love in the UK, you know, places where they swim or walk or cycle. I think, you know, I think Janet's boss might have actually made it onto the map, and I could take a stab at who probably put it on there. But where do you swim in Bradford, you know, and what do you like about some of the places that you've swam?
When I was living in the Yorkshire Dales, I was completely and utterly spoilt for choice about where I swam. Like, the village I was living in had a river running through it, and I could walk 2 fields away. I'd got this arrangement with a farmer where he would let me go through his fields as long as I shut all the gates properly behind me, so that I could basically have a riverbank to myself, which was just amazing. And then when I moved down the valley to Bradford, I had this, for a while, I got a bit stuck in a sort of like, where am I going to swim now kind of thing. And I'd been researching where people were swimming in Bradford, and everybody went, swimming in Bradford? Nobody swims in Bradford. There's nowhere to swim in Bradford. And they're wrong. There's a disused reservoir that's just like a couple of miles from the centre of Bradford, and also on my way home from work, very helpful. And the water quality is amazing. Like, people go, Chelodine, you can't swim in Chelodine. Are you allowed to swim there? And I'm like, well, the people who I swim with usually, they were like, oh, I'm never gonna put my head under here. Like, I don't trust it. And so I became like the kind of like the tester for whether the water was going to kill us or not, because I can't help but put my head under. I think that's really the that's the definite defining feature of a swim is like putting my head under the water is the total reset button. Like a swim with my head above the water is pretty good, but it's never going to do the same job as a head under job.
Totally agree. I completely agree. Like when people don't, like, putting your head under is the cleansing bit. It's the nicest.
That's the
I can't believe it when people don't do it. I know, it's unbelievable. I'm with you on that. I'm totally with you on that.
Yeah, totally.
But I've been absolutely loving all of the videos that you've been making and putting up on Instagram of you like doing like indoor swims through places like with goggles on and things. They're just so great.
I've quite enjoyed the crazy activities at home. The slip and slide in the corridor was probably like the defining feature of my first week of lockdown. I was my dad was coming over to bring me some stuff, and he went, "Is there anything you need?" And I was like, "Do you have a tarpaulin by any chance?" And he was like,
So obviously, Amy, I've got an amazing memory of us the day after the Adventure Uncovered Film Festival meeting on Hampstead Heath and going up to the women's pond.
The ponds, it was such an amazing day. I mean, we were so lucky that the sun was shining and it was kind of a crisp, cold day. I do remember like a really entertaining bit for me was that obviously there's the lifeguard there on duty, and it sounds like they always check in with people in the winter about whether they're new to swimming, whether they're okay. And I'm very much a like throw myself in and get on with it kind of swimmer. And so I was lowering myself down the steps, and she went, "Oh, are you okay? Can I just check? Are you all right? Are you And I like, she said, "Are you new to swimming?" And I went, "Oh, I'm new to the ponds, but I'm not new to swimming." And just like pushed off into the water, and she went, "Yeah, okay, you're fine. You're fine. Off you pop." Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for sticking around and listening to both Calum and Amy. Some really incredible discussions and two very, very inspirational people. And I am joined by both Calum and Amy. Hi, guys.
Hey.
And so thank you so much, guys, for sticking around. I know it's very hot out there tonight, and you're probably would both definitely be rather out in splashing around somewhere wild, right?
I think so. Yeah, it's a perfect day for it. I'm just saving all my energy up for this weekend when I can get released out into the wild.
Perfect. Well, so we've got a few questions to get through, and I kind of wanted to frame them around what I found was really interesting about your two different Q&As that we spoke to you. Rosie spoke to you separately, but when you watch them both back side by side, there's some really common themes there. So I thought we could kind of frame around some of the common things that you both spoke about, and they tie in really nicely to some of the questions that we've had come through on the live Q&A. So the first kind of theme is the very obvious one in your title. Your films are both called Swim Wild and Wild Swim. Now, Calum, you did speak about the actual name Wild is very, very close to you guys because it's your grandma's name, Grandma Wild. But I just wanted to hear from both of you what the word wild actually means to you. What does it mean for you, to the point that you've put it in your titles? And that ties in with a question that we've had for Calum, so you could maybe speak about this as well. This is a question from James in London. Hi James, thanks for watching, who said, your grandma sounds really inspirational. What was the main thing that you learned from her growing up? So maybe you could start with that one and talk about wild in general, and then Amy, we can hear what wild means to you.
I think our Grandma Wild is a literal and metaphorical representation of the wild. It's obviously seems now retrospectively to have fallen into place perfectly, and how nice it is to have a grandma called Grandma Wild and be interested in wild swimming. But I don't think you can really separate the two. So for us, for the people who don't know, Grandma Wild was our grandma on our mum's side, maiden name Wild, and she lived in the Highlands of Scotland. The loch behind me in my picture is the loch which was by her house. So we kind of grew up always going to visit her, and it was this beautiful, rugged landscape. It was a sense of freedom, of escaping from our lives and going and seeing her. So she always really represented something adventurous or free, which I think is what ties into the wild aspect of swimming, and why have both me and Amy called our films Swim Wild and Wild Swim? Why is it even called Wild Swimming, as lots of the angry online folk often proclaim their frustration at how dare we call it wild swimming? And to me, it just symbolises swimming whilst in touch with the natural world and a sense of freedom that you don't find in a swimming pool.
Fantastic. What about you, Amy?
I think it's really funny that you bring that up, Calum, because I've had several people criticise me for calling it wild swimming. It's not wild, it just used to be called swimming. It's like, well, yeah, that's all very well. Everybody did learn to swim outdoors, 100 years ago, but that's not how it is now. Most people who swim do swim inside, in pools, because that's what's available to them. But I think there's something, totally different to be found from swimming outside, the things that we talked about in our individual films about like having the sky above you and, everything that you get to see when you're outside. I think there is an element of wilding about it that's really important.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. I think it also makes sense in the UK, and it doesn't necessarily make sense in other countries. For instance, I've just spent a year living in Singapore and came back due to coronavirus, but the concept of wild swimming in Southeast Asia makes no sense because everybody wild swims at the beaches. The water's warm and it's beautiful, so they don't really have the same concept, whereas somewhere like the UK, especially England, is incredibly overpopulated, one of the most densely populated countries in Europe. It's urbanized. What we think of as the wild, take for instance the Lake District, is effectively a well-managed garden with lots of lawn mowing sheep. So we're very removed from what is actually wild. So I think that's why it's maybe caught on in the UK, because we don't have as much access to wild places. So nipping off to jump in a lake does genuinely feel wild if your norm is an urban environment.
So that's a really good point, and that sort of ties in very really nicely, thank you, to my next kind of theme that we saw in your two answers there, which is this idea of you mentioned, I think it was Calum that mentioned urban detachment. I think you used the word dislocation, which I really love as a term, and the idea that this generation is growing up with phones and screens, and even if we are outdoors, we're not truly disconnected. And so I just wanted to sort of think, ask both of you about how you balance today's modern hectic life with, life in London or life at work and screens and social media with that. How do you get enough disconnection? And that ties in with a question that's coming from, I think it's Joe in Wales. Hi Joe, thanks for joining us, who said, what's the longest period of time that you haven't taken an outdoor swim? And maybe, was that really hard for you? So Amy, do you want to start that one?
Yeah, sure. So I've had a couple of times over the last few years where I haven't been able to swim, and both times I've felt a really serious loss of identity around it, because I think like so much of my life is revolves around getting outdoors, not always swimming, but if the opportunity is there, then usually. And so in particular, fairly topical, but recently when lockdown happened, I made the decision not to swim at my usual local swimming point. I know that, lots of people had followed different advice, and that's absolutely fine. But my decision was to not swim there at the time. And I really struggled with it. That was what led me to things like the slip and slide in the corridor in my flat and sticking my head in a mop bucket full of water, because I was really missing it. And I think like it does form quite a big part of my identity and like how I spend my time. You know, like I'm really lucky that one of the main places I swim is on my way back from work. So I can kind of, you know, like a lot of people use the phrase, what did they say? Not 9 to 5ing, 5 to 9ing, like the stuff that you do kind of around your day job kind of thing. And I feel like I really enjoy that concept of micro adventures. You know, you might not have a life or a job that allows you to have huge periods of time going away to do things, but if you can find little snippets of time and find bits of outside to enjoy, then that can be a really good part of it.
Brilliant. And what about you, Calum?
Yeah, I would agree. I think that there is a real dislocation. I mean, you're seeing at the moment this kind of societal cocooning where everyone's just locked in their houses, maybe minimal access to the outdoors, or it's gradually started opening up and people are really realizing how important, and it's sad that it takes something like being locked in your house for people to realize how important the natural world is and how important a connection to it is. And it's not just a playground for an adventure, which is also really fun, but it's completely integral to your mental health, your physical health. And yeah, I've really, really missed it. And I think a lot of people, whether it's wild swimming or hiking or running or whatever it is, whatever anyone in the UK does to let off steam, I think they will really, really be feeling missing that at the moment. And yeah, I think it really helps me connect and feel a tether to the natural world. And wild swimming's I don't know the longest time I haven't gone for a swim. The problem is you create something called the Wild Swimming Brothers and you really have to swim quite a lot. So, you know, we can't just...
Yeah, you can't go and hide, can you?
We're actually, we've renamed it with the Wild Xbox Brothers, and we've just got really good at computer games. It's just, so yeah, if I would advise you to create something, which means you have to do something that's good for you. So the worst thing we have to do is go for a swim, which is always quite good.
Yeah, there's worse things that you could force yourself, sort of trap yourself into doing, I suppose. Sorry.
No, it's just, I think you're right. I always feel sorry for people if they've created something and then realise they don't actually enjoy it and they're trying to maintain it and they just hate it.
But luckily that's not the case for you guys.
No, we love wild swimming. Don't let Jack and Robbie tell you anything otherwise.
Okay. And I'm going to come back to a kind of an extension of what we've just talked about, but just briefly, because we're talking about phones and screens. Amy, you talked in your Q&A about the first time that you saw your film was at the Adventure Uncovered Film Festival on the big screen. That was the first time you'd seen it other than just kind of watching it on a phone. And I just wanted to talk to you for a second about, you know, the process of filmmaking, and Calum, this is the same for you. As a filmmaker myself, I'm very familiar with the concept of, you know, you edit on a laptop screen, or you're very close to the film as an edit project. And there's something very different about seeing it in a cinema. On a big screen. So maybe you could both talk a little bit about that. But Amy, specifically because you mentioned it, how did it feel that first time that you saw yourself on the big screen? And how does it feel now that you've seen this film, you know, lots of times and you've had a lot of exposure and feedback?
Yeah, it was really strange that first time. At Adventure Uncovered was the first time me and Kate had seen it together on a big screen, and I saw it at Kendall the first time on a big screen myself, and it was really huge, the screen. It was like they were actually showing it in a proper cinema, and it was really bizarre because, like I said, I'd only ever seen it on my phone before. And I think, again, because the film is so short, like it's not even like you've got that long to get used to it. I was sat there trying not to go too bright red, because then I was going to have to walk up to the front and do a Q&A. So I was trying not to like cry or bury myself in embarrassment. But I think I was quite lucky that, you know, I said that my dad saw it for the first time, but it wasn't the same showing that I saw it at. I didn't sit in either of the showings that either of my parents saw it at. So I got to see it kind of like by myself for the first time, which I think was kind of nice in a way. I felt like I needed a bit of a moment of adjustment. I think it just feels like, you know, Kate did such an amazing job editing it. And like I say, like the film process is not something that's particularly familiar to me. I'm really keen on photography, but I don't really do very much about filmmaking. So all of that is credit to Kate. You know, she spent months and months of her spare time making this film and then kind of
gave it to me as a sort of, if you want to enter it to film festivals, that's up to you. But I think, she felt like it was really important that it was led by me because it was about me kind of thing, which is very kind of her.
Yeah, brilliant, and real testament to her as well, because I do think she's captured you perfectly in that film. It's just such a wonderful testament to you both, really. Calum, what about you? Because you've been featured publicly, the Wild Swimming Brothers. You have a book out. You do a lot of public speaking. Is it still strange for you to see yourself on film and to be part of the behind the camera and on camera process?
I just absolutely love it. I really enjoy it, and I find it really creatively fulfilling and fun. And the process is, we're just swimming with each other in beautiful locations. So it's, to me, I love the process. The company who filmed it, Click On, did an incredible job of capturing why we swam, and it was all really about Grandma Wild and her influence. And I think just looking back on it, it's just a really wonderful record of what you did and how enjoyable it was. The thing that you probably don't notice as well, and you'll find this, Amy, over time, is it really starts to affect the people that you know in a positive way. Our mum, who wasn't a big swimmer at all, maybe four years ago, now swims more than any of me, Robbie and Jack. Every single day she's out swimming. She swam all through winter. I was in Singapore, and in January she was sending me photos of her with ice on her head swimming at a loch in Scotland. And I went up and met her and swam with all of her new swimming friends, and they all called her the crazy swimming lady. And it's lovely. And so many things like that come out of the woodwork, a friend, a cousin, and you won't realise that you're just creating something that's positive, and it will influence people that you know or people that you don't know in a positive way. So I just really enjoy it. I feel quite lucky.
So you need to rename yourself the Wild Swimming Family now.
Well, yeah, you joke, but Mum's branched off now. She's called the Wild Swimming Mother, and she, on average, twice as many likes for a photo with Mum in. If it's got Mum in, it just takes the three of us. Nothing.
Old news. Don't care about the brothers anymore. Yeah. It's all about the mom. Brilliant. Brilliant. So on that, we're talking very positively. You did both mention there, about the kind of restorative process of swimming, and we've both mentioned, we've all mentioned current situation with lockdown and how difficult that can be. In both of your Q&As and both of your films, you discuss the idea of wild swimming as a treatment for depression or anxiety in varying levels, as to how it can treat these mental health disorders. And in fact, going from just being something that just makes you feel great and kind of, Amy, I think you used the phrase like resetting or, switch that resets, right the way through to the idea of prescribing, for maybe we'll get to a point where we start to appreciate the wild as a prescriptive, actually being told you have to have an hour in nature. So we've got a question here from Ruth in Kent. Hi Ruth, thank you so much for joining us. Ruth is asking, after what we've all experienced during this pandemic, it feels even more important to capitalise on the benefits of outdoor swimming that you both so eloquently put across. But she's saying, as somebody brand new to this, really, she says she's dead keen to get started, but what can we do to simply take that first step? Where do you begin?
This will sound counterintuitive, but the wonders of social media, Ruth, that will be your best friend, because really, as a beginner or even an experienced swimmer, you shouldn't really swim on your own. It's the same ethos of climbing. You do want to swim in a group. So I would recommend that whatever your local area is, get onto Facebook or Twitter and search for the name of where you live and outdoor swimmers. And I guarantee there will be a group of resident swimmers who are fantastic at baking cakes and will be very welcoming. And just introduce yourself and just say, hi, I'm a complete beginner and I want to try it out. And I promise you there'll be a really welcoming group of people who will kind of show you safe places to swim or good places with public access, etc. So yeah, I'd find your local outdoor swimming group. You'll be able to find them just on Facebook, yeah.
Brilliant. And what about you, Amy? How did you get into wild swimming yourself?
I think I've basically been swimming for about as long as I've been alive. Like, I'm pretty lucky that I grew up in a town with a river running through it, and my mum's a really keen wild swimmer as well. In fact, like she's become far more of a hardcore wild swimmer than I have over the last few years. She's swum like virtually every day for the last however many months. She's just
shout out to the mums.
I know.
Well, why are we on here?
Also,
Let's get the mums on.
Yeah. I've got videos of my mum on my Instagram, like jumping off a waterfall into a river, and she's had 2 knee replacements, and like sometimes she needs a hand to get in or out, but no, other than that, no, she's fine. She's off.
I think we're gonna have to have an Adventure Uncovered mums episode, aren't we? Nominate your mum for the most adventurous mums. If you're watching and you've got an adventurous mum, then nominate them. We'll get them all on here. Brilliant. So definitely social media. Calum there's suggested finding your kind of local community groups, and I'd definitely like to also recommend Adventure Uncovered as a community. You can find us on social media. You can also email info@Adventure Uncovered at any time. You can check out our website. We have a wonderful community of really inspiring adventurers, just like Amy and Calum here, and there's always on Facebook somebody willing to lend swimming goggles, or say, well, we're heading off to this place on Saturday or whatever. So social distancing or included, and make sure that you do everything safely, but do reach out to your local communities and just give it a go. Brilliant, thank you. Sticking with that same theme, last couple of questions. Amy, you had this amazing phrase in your film where you talk about swimming is for you, it's about allowing you to inhabit your body again. I just think it's such a beautiful phrase. You talk about the disconnect during periods of depression, perhaps, but this disconnect where we go into our mind. Could you maybe just talk us through that in a little bit more detail, and maybe give some advice for somebody who is in the current times, there's a lot of anxiety, maybe feeling that disconnect from their bodies?
I was going to say that now is probably a really good example of that, because I think, obviously there have been some people who've continued going to work and things through this and have perhaps had like additionally stressful times, but there's also been a lot of people just sat at home, not being really unsure what to do with themselves, and doing a lot of what I usually refer to as navel gazing, and just like disappearing up into your head to think about things for hours on end. And so I think anything that you can do that like physically returns you to your body is a really positive thing for mental health. I mean, like Calum was saying before, anything that you do outside is going to be beneficial for your mental health. We know that just being outside is really helpful. But I think anything you do that then like physically connects your body and grounds you into it again is really important. And that's definitely what happens for me. And like, I have to admit in a way that the colder the water, the better for that, because it really, like, the water it gets to a beautiful temperature this time of year, but it doesn't give you the same kind of shock. There's really something about getting really properly cold in winter, and like the kind of the tingling all over afterwards as you're warming up again. And I think I said something about how it resets my brain, and I think I just quite often I can find that I'm on the way to a swim, or I'm thinking about swimming later in the day, and my brain is just a bit like a washing machine. And once I've swum, I always feel better. I don't ever feel worse for a swim, to be honest. So quite often it just brings a bit of stillness that is usually what I was after.
Oh, it sounds amazing. I can't wait to get out. Every time I speak to either of you, I'm like, right, tomorrow, that's it. I'm going to go find the nearest body of water and jump straight in. It sounds very addictive, sounds really appealing, especially today with the heat. We're all a bit sticky, aren't we? So my final question to you then is this sort of final theme that you both mentioned in your pieces was that you both spoke about your younger selves. So Calum, you spoke about the 8-year-old version of you, and what they might have thought of your sort of current life, and Amy, you mentioned 15-year-old Amy, you wish that she could have had this sort of opportunity. So I just wonder what you would both what do you think 8-year-old Calum and 15-year-old Amy would think of what you're both doing now? What do you think? What would they say to you? What would you say to them?
It's a really interesting question, because it's almost the only person you truly have to hold yourself accountable is yourself. And it's difficult to hold yourself accountable to your present self because you can't necessarily reflect on what you currently are and what you're currently doing in a really meaningful way. Whereas as soon as you delve into the past and you look at yourself as a child or a different period of your life, you've got a much better understanding of who that person was and what they wanted. So I think I use it as a kind of way to hold myself accountable to what do I truly want to do. And adulthood is a little bit of a competition between the reality of life versus the expectations and positive enthusiasm of youth. So I just use it to try not to stray too far away from kind of young, innocent, playful, fun-loving me and not get too browbeaten and battered down by kind of the 9-to-5 or the working world. So yeah, I use 8-year-old Calum. I'm sure he'd say, "What's wild swimming? we just went in the sea."
Brilliant. And Amy?
So I think a big part of what I was referencing there was kind of like a lot about body image and things, because I felt really uncomfortable in my physical self as a teenager. And like I felt like a lot of the outdoor activities weren't for me. I remember going on a school residential, and not being as physically fit as some of my peers and feeling like really put out by it. You know, like I wasn't really good at some of the activities that they're doing. But at the same time, I really loved swimming and I really loved cycling. And I feel like sometimes schools maybe aren't the best environments for kind of fostering like what is good for, you know, what activities people are really interested in. I think a lot more could be done about that, to be honest. So, you know, it was great that I got to pursue those things outside of school. And I think, you know, a big part of it was about representation, about, you know, like if I'd been able to kind of see, you know, future me or, you know, somebody my age just enjoying the outdoors, regardless of, you know, what they looked like and what they were doing and how they felt about their physical body, then, you know, I might have felt a bit more confidence about, oh yeah, well, I'm just going to get on with it too. So I think that's probably like that would be the biggest thing that I would want to pass on to 15-year-old me is, oh, stuff what you look like, just get on with it and concentrate on how it makes you feel and how you can make other people feel with it. Because I think that's the biggest, like, that's one of the greatest joys is like taking friends swimming and the impact that it has on other people's lives when you can like pass on your like great joy about something and it, you know, other people enjoy it as well. Then you just stop thinking about what you look like and you just think about how you feel instead.
Yeah, totally agree. And what's wonderful is that you may not have been on the screen for 15-year-old Amy, but you are on the screen and you're out there now for 15-year-old lots of other young people, and they do have that representation on screen. So what you're doing is amazing by you know, providing a whole new generation with something that you know, that your younger self felt lacking. So fantastic, congratulations to both of you for everything that you're doing, for advocating, you know, this connection with nature, getting out there, reconnecting, this tingling, freezing feeling. We've run out of time already because this was once again a really fascinating conversation. But I do want to finish. We've had a last minute question that's just come through from Steve in Brighton. Really good one to answer at the end. What's your top UK swim spot? Now I know that you both contributed to. Well, it was Jack, another brother who was at the Adventure Uncovered Film Festival, but Amy as well, you both contributed to our Adventure Uncovered map, which is available in digital form, so do check that out on our website. You can zoom around and you can see everybody's recommendations. Both of you, maybe top 2 or 3 if it's too hard to pick one, best swimming spot that we should be going to.
Ooh, that's a tough one, Steve. It's a tough one. Number one, I would say, is definitely for me the River Eden in Cumbria. So it's not very well known. It's about 5-6 miles north of the Lake District, but it's the 9th longest river in the UK. It's relatively pristine and untouched. And there's a place near where we grew up called Lacey's Caves, and it's this old mining network that's carved into the rock, and below it is this cascade of waterfalls with this huge deep pool. And there's lots of stacks that you can jump off. One of them was called the Tower, and it was like a rite of passage as a child that you had to go and jump off the tower. I've been back, and it's not as big as I thought it was, but it's still a good jump. And there's like waterfalls you can swim under and stuff, and it's really, really beautiful. And it's not very well known. until now that I've just announced it as my favourite swim spot. But I would recommend the River Eden, Steve.
Brilliant, thank you. We'll try and keep our social distancing when we're queuing up there tomorrow morning.
Yeah. Well, I mean, on that note, I'm going to be even more vague than you are, Calum, because I'm just going to say the River Wharf in general, but I'm not going to tell you where. You can, try out. There's lots of really good bits of the River Wharf, but one of the most memorable swims outside of that was that, and I can tell you this one because honestly, if you can be bothered to get there, then you deserve to densely populate it, because it genuinely takes hours and hours to get there from anywhere other than that corner of Scotland. So it was in Morar, and then you go to Arisaig, probably pronouncing it all wrong, but then we went 8 miles down a dead end track and camped up for the night, watching seals come into like the stillest sea I've ever seen, and it overlooks Egg and Rum. It was like, honestly, I think it might be the calmest I've ever felt. It was just amazing. And then the next day when we woke up, we walked another couple of miles further out onto this like peninsula, and there are beaches that just look like the Caribbean. It was the most crystal clear sea I've ever seen in my life, and the beaches are just like, white sand. It was amazing. I really want to go back there one day. And so if you can be bothered to go that far into Scotland and 8 miles down a dead end road and then walk until the land is no more, then you're welcome to it.
Sounds like absolute paradise. I hope they're both on our digital map. If they're not, we'll get them up there as well. So do check out that map. That's all we've got time for, I'm afraid. Thank you so much to both of you for joining us again, and for inspiring us once again. Before we go, if I can ask, what's the best way for us to contact you? If anybody who was watching didn't get a chance to ask a question or didn't have a YouTube account, can we contact you through social media? What's the best way if we've got some questions, some follow-up questions?
Yeah, you can contact us on the Wild Swimming Brothers Instagram or Wild Swim Brother Twitter, or the website, which is www.thewildswimmingbrothers.com. We're on all of them except TikTok. Haven't quite motivated myself to join TikTok yet.
Alan, what have you been doing with your lockdown time? You haven't joined TikTok.
I know, it's just like you spend years learning one platform and then another one comes along and you're like, oh, I'm too old for this. I'll get on it eventually. And a few more months of lockdown maybe, and then I'll join.
So for the Instagram would be the best place. I'm on there as Swim the Wild. Can put it in the comments on the
perfect
on the YouTube link as well.
Brilliant. Well, if you are watching and you've got more questions for Amy or Calum, do reach out to them, follow them on the social media, because they post some amazing things and lots of more inspiring messages. So they're a wonderful, wonderful part of our community, and we're really proud to have both of you in the Adventure Uncovered world. That's it for today, but do keep checking our website, adventureuncovered.com, and you can email info@adventureuncovered if you have any questions. We do still have our first editions, which is our online platform with all kinds of amazing content on there. There's podcasts, there's videos, there's blogs, there's articles, there's all kinds of really cool things, plus that digital map. So if you've got some inspiration for coming out of lockdown and wanting to get out and about, then do check that out. We are also a couple of weeks away from launching editions number 2, which we're really excited about. So if you want to be part of editions number 2, the theme of this next one is storytelling. So if you have an unusual way of telling stories, maybe you're an artist or a poet or a dancer or a filmmaker or a photographer or any kind of creative form of expression of storytelling, then again, email us info@adventureuncovered.com, and we might be able to get you featured in our editions. So do stay in touch, keep in contact, follow us on social media, and use the hashtag AU Conversations to find out more about when we have another one of these. But for now, it's goodbye from me, and thank you so much again, Amy and Calum, for joining us. See you again soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.